Thanks for joining us for Team Talk Thursday with Team Advantage of RE/MAX Bakken Realty. And today our topic is the home inspection. So we're going to just have an informal talk about the home inspection today and let our viewers know the importance of the home inspection. So let's start there. Why should homeowners get a home inspection?
I think home inspections are important because it allows the buyer to kind of see the things that don't stand out immediately on when you're going to see the home. So when you go through to see the home, a lot of times you got emotions around it. You're like, oh, this is a beautiful house. I love it. And you're not really thinking about the parts you can't see. So I think an inspector will turn up a lot of things you can't see and kind of give you a better idea of what you're buying.
Is the home inspection for the buyer's purpose then? Is that who it's meant for, Heather?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's their due diligence. In other words, they love the house, they think it's awesome, but let's just make sure the roof shingles are all there. Let's make sure all the electrical outlets work properly. There's no leaks under the kitchen sink, things like that. Or worse, crawl into the crawl space and the whole thing's flooded. So, it's the buyer's chance to make sure that there's nothing unexpected. And ultimately, a good inspector is going to show them where the water shutoff is, where their electrical panel is, so that if there are any safety issues, the buyer can address them quickly when they own the house too.
So if they have an inspection and they find out that the roof is bad, does that make the sellers automatically responsible to replace the roof?
No. So what I always say to buyers is there's kind of 2 points of negotiation. One is the appraisal, and that comes later, but this one is the property inspection. So if the appraiser comes, or the inspector, comes back and says, there's a couple shingles missing, one of the electrical outlets doesn't work, there's a leak under the kitchen sink, the vinyl siding has a couple holes in it, we as agents know that based on a buyer's lending program, we may need to ask for those things to be repaired by the seller. Or if the buyer is okay with it, we take it as is. So it's a negotiation process. Maybe the buyer says, okay, because I have FHA financing, here are some things we need fixed. There are some shingles missing. There's the vinyl siding. And if that seller is represented by an agent, most agents know that those things need to be fixed. But ultimately, the seller can say, no, we're not going to fix anything. You can take this as is. It's not our fault. You're only FHA qualified. Sorry. So it's that chance to know if there's something wrong with the house. We can ask to have it fixed, but it doesn't guarantee it's going to be fixed.
Right.
And Katie, sometimes in my instance, I've had some clients in the past where maybe it was just peace of mind. There was something that was found in the inspection and they're very capable of it. And so again, you go back to the negotiation table and see, what buyer and seller can agree on, but sometimes them just knowing what's really there, and they're handy enough to be able to fix it, but that everything was on the table and they didn't walk into that house blindly.
Yep.
I think it determines too what kind of price you're under contract. If you're coming in full price on a house, I think a buyer has a reasonable expectation that some fixes will be made, especially the major ones. I would also suggest too that, while buyers should always get an inspection, they shouldn't, when it comes to negotiating and asking for things to get fixed, they don't want to add a shopping cart list of things too, because it is always a negotiation. And, sometimes, especially if you're under list price or you've offered lower, asking the seller to fix 20 different items can at times be unreasonable.
The other side too is I think a lot of people look at that inspection report and expect to see, silly things like, and they're not silly, but paint chips on the inside fixed. And that kind of is one of those things where paint's so easy. And at a minimum, we can ask the buyer if they know what the paint code is, or the seller if they know what the paint code is. So we can at least do the touch-ups later. And, any paint chips that are there now could get worse when you move in. Now, paint chips on the exterior are a different story. So it really is, we as agents know kind of what sellers have tolerance for in a lot of cases too. So,
Katie, you had mentioned the appraisal, and what is the difference between a home inspection and an appraisal?
So really, an appraisal is something you have to have in order for that lender to give you a loan. So what they're doing is making sure that the value is not too low based on what your offer is. So they're not going to lend you more than the house is worth. It's their protection. The property inspection is your protection as the buyer. So it's your chance to make sure that even before you spend the money on the appraisal process through the lender, that the house is in a condition that you're willing to accept.
And so does that mean the homeowner or the buyer is paying for the home inspection most likely?
Yes, absolutely. There are always things that can be negotiated during the purchase agreement process, that initial offer. I've never put in there that a seller would pay for a property inspection, but that's not to say it couldn't happen.
Sure. Sometimes I kind of encourage that buyer to, because then that report is solely theirs and it's in their best interest. You want to be able to get in and get that home inspected so that you can find out as much information about it, and you want that to be yours, so.
The other thing that sometimes buyers will do, especially if they have some experience in the construction industry, they'll do their own inspection. And while that's okay, it's always a good idea to get a third uninterested opinion, because that person is not motivated in any way. A buyer is about to spend a lot of money, and that it's a big step and there's a lot of emotion involved, whereas the inspector is very impartial, is going to give you the picture of what's going on without any emotions involved. And that seller is more likely to believe that third-party inspector than they would a buyer inspector. Yeah. So that's always a recommendation I have as well. It's always a good idea to get, even if it's a friend, at least you've got that third party. And even then a seller is going to be skeptical, but doing it yourself can introduce some bias, which is always hard to deal with. So.
And on that note, I know that as a realtor, when my clients come to me and we write that purchase agreement and we build those dates in to get that home inspection, the first thing I do is give them a list of local home inspectors that are in town and try to help coordinate for that to happen, for them to get in, so they have as much resources as possible to get that inspection done.
What about an FHA inspection appraisal? Is that an appraisal or is that an inspection?
It's an inspection part of the appraisal, but it's separate from the actual home inspection process. So a lot of buyers too think the lender is going to require me to get this inspected, aren't they? Lenders typically don't, ask, or lenders usually don't require the inspection be done. It's for buyer benefit. When an appraiser comes to do an inspection, he's looking for key things that the VA, USDA, FHA, or Department of Housing and Urban Development are looking for. And also, if it's a conventional loan, what their investor guidelines are. So that even if it's a conventional loan, you might have an investor that says, I won't invest in a loan with a faulty roof or whatnot. And when an appraiser comes to do that, they're verifying these guidelines. They're like an FHA loan where, it has to be turnkey. You can't have missing flooring or anything like that, at least on the main level. And so an appraiser might come in and say, the kitchen's missing flooring, so therefore we cannot, this loan can't close until this flooring's replaced, and so forth. So they're the same kind of process, but separate entities, if that makes sense.
And ultimately, an FHA appraiser is not going to show you where the water shut off is.
No.
That inspector is going to give you that really critical safety information that an FHA appraisal has their inspector list of things that they're looking for, and it's not a comprehensive look at the entire house. It's only looking at those critical things.
And that's a good point, because an appraiser could be in and out of a house in 20 to 30 minutes, while you'll find a home inspector could be there for 2, 3, 4 hours even. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they're really, like I always tell people, they're on their hands and knees looking for anything and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So. Right, you guys. Do you guys have anything else to add about the home inspection?
Sometimes I do think that a client may feel pressured to be there. And if you speak to a lot of home inspectors, they have the option to be there. They have the option not to be. But either way, that inspector keeps clear communication with that client. So they're going to know everything. They're going to get a report typically within the first 24 hours of the home visit from that home inspector. And that inspector is going to go through it with them and show them everything in there so they have a clear understanding. So maybe you got somebody that works 12-hour days and, they are not able to be there. That doesn't mean that they're not going to have the opportunity to have just as much information. They still are privy to that information. Yeah.
It's like I always tell buyers too, a couple hundred now could save you a couple thousand later. And it is just so true. There's so many times people waive inspections and they get into a house and then they're moved in, everything's signed and closed. And then they realize, faulty plumbing, faulty electrical, maybe there is, something under the carpets they didn't know, water damage, whatever the case is. And it can cost thousands at that point.
Mm-hmm. The other thing too, when you get into the negotiation of those repairs, if a seller maybe is unwilling to do some of them, but you still just have this worry, one solution is a home warranty for 12 months. And, that's a completely different topic, but there are solutions. Even when a seller says, no, I'm not going to fix things, there are solutions to make you feel good about moving forward. If it's your dream house and you want it, and you want to get it, we can make it happen for you. So
that's really good.
Cool. I think that about wraps it up.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us for Team Talk Thursday. Our episode was on home inspection. Like always, if you have a topic that you would like to hear us discuss about anything real estate, just give us a message or an email. Thanks for joining us, and join us next Thursday for another Team Talk Thursday with Team Advantage.
Thank you.